Are you tired of crocheting and then joining two hexagons to make your cardigan? This video is for you. I'll show you how to crochet your cardigan in one piece. Yes, you read that right. You no longer need to repeat the same thing twice or go through the sewing process. I've launched a long series of tutorials because this technique can be adapted into multiple versions. Longer or shorter, with longer short sleeves, with or without a hood, with or without a collar. We will even make pants. So don't hesitate to follow me on all my platforms to discover lots of original projects. The detailed explanatory videos will be on YouTube, the written patterns and diagrams on Ko-fi and Ravelry, and the short recap videos will be available on TikTok in French and on Instagram in English. Hello everyone, this is Annie from Drama Crochet and welcome to this new crochet tutorial. Feel free to adjust the video playback speed in the settings if needed. Today we're going to make a cardigan with long sleeves, or rather longer sleeves, because in the basic version, it's perfectly possible to have long sleeves but with an oversized fit. So in this tutorial, we'll be making long sleeves with a fitted chest circumference. For materials, you'll obviously need a crochet hook and the corresponding yarn. I'm going to use this variegated acrylic yarn from Action. You'll also need a tape measure, a pair of scissors, and stitch markers. Optionally, a yarn needle or a small crochet hook to weave in the ends at the end. If you have already followed my tutorial on the Momo Octagonal cardigan, you'll notice the similarities between the two. We'll still be working with granny stitch, but it's perfectly possible to use other stitches. I'll show you how in a later tutorial. But if you are experienced, you will understand right away and you can use whichever stitches you like. And for everyone else, you will just have to be patient. If you want the exact same color sequence as mine, you'll need to start the central tape with the main color. This starting tape looks like 3 rows on top of each other. Then work 2 rounds of the secondary color. And continue in this way, 3 rounds of the main color, followed by 2 rounds of the secondary color. Since I was too lazy to make a ribbed cuff for my cardigan, I simply made the stitches tighter on the side of the sleeve opening to make it narrower. This is entirely optional. You can, if you prefer, stick with the granny stitch to have a sleeve with the same circumference all the way around. But I'm going to show you how I did this one. I'm always changing how I make my first slip knot. If you don't already have one, you can copy mine. I try to give you all the information you need to make this cardigan correctly. But I should mention that there's a lot of useful and helpful information in my previous tutorial, which covers the construction of the most basic octagon, the Momo Octagonal cardigan. Chain 6, slip stitch into the first chain to close the ring. Then chain 3, which will count as the very first double crochet. Then make 2 double crochets into the ring. And that's the first group of 3 double crochets. This group of 3 double crochets is called a granny stitch. So every time I say granny stitch, it means a group of 3 double crochets. Then chain 2 and a second granny stitch into the ring. Chain 2, turn, skip the granny stitch, and then make a granny stitch in the space that immediately follows. Then repeat this process until you obtain a length equal the desired back width measurement for the cardigan. That is, half of the chest circumference. But make sure to take the measurement with the desired ease. You can absolutely compare the measurements with a garment of the correct size. Whether it's a t-shirt or a jacket, the measurement is taken from the starting ring. For the miniature version of this tutorial, I've reduced the scale so that 10 centimeters is equivalent to 1 inch. My desired width is 50 centimeters, so I need 5 inches. And as we saw in the previous tutorial, aligned with the starting ring, there also needs to be a hole. So I'm going to add a row to have the starting ring and the last space on the same side aligned. Turn and repeat 3 times, chain 2 and granny stitch in the same space. We have therefore 5 granny stitches around this space. And as you might have guessed, this space will be the center of the second armhole. The starting ring is the center of the first. Chain 2 and turn. Skip the granny stitch and work a granny stitch in the space that comes immediately after. Then again, chain 2 and work a granny stitch in the next space. We'll repeat this until the total length of the tape is equal to the measurement from the side of the neck to the opposite wrist. Does this remind you of anything? Yes, we've already seen it in the sleeve to wrist version of the basic construction of the octagonal cardigan. We'll often work with these two measurements in most variations of this construction. My measures haven't changed since last time. My side of the neck to my opposite wrist is still 70 centimeters, so I need 7 inches in total. And as before, there needs to be a space aligned with the starting ring and the center of the second armpit, so I need to add a row. We turn and repeat twice, chain 2 and granny stitch in the same space. So we have 4 granny stitches around the last space. And we'll continue with a granny stitch in each space to turn to the starting ring. As we crochet a granny stitch in the armpit center, we now have a total of 6 granny stitches around that space, like a hexagon, but especially like in the basic construction in the previous tutorial. We add a granny stitch in the starting ring, chain 2 and another granny stitch, again in the starting ring. We're going to repeat the exact same extension as for the right side. So we need to count and repeat the same number of rows above the second armpit. For me, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to work 5 rows from here. Chain 2, turn, and a granny stitch in the space that comes right after. That is the first row, and I'm going to add 4 more. I double check that there are the same number of granny stitches on the outer side, a way to verify that we are symmetrical, and we do the exact same thing again. So we turn and repeat twice, chain 2 and granny stitch in the same space. And here we also have a total of 4 granny stitches around the space at the very end. And then we make 1 granny stitch in each space to return to the starting ring. We can see here that we only have 4 granny stitches in the starting ring, so we'll need to add 2 more. We add the first one, then chain 2, and then the second granny stitch. And as you probably already know, we close with a half double crochet at the very top of the first double crochet with 3 chain stitches. And we have our starting tape around which all the other rounds will be worked, which, even though it has a weird shape, is an octagon. The half double crochet replaces the chain 2 space of the very first corner space. We have a total of 8 corner spaces, 7 unoccupied chain 2 spaces, and 1 half double crochet space to be perfectly accurate. To make a cardigan with straight sleeves, the row structure is the one we've seen countless times before. 2 granny stitches in each corner space and 1 granny stitch in each regular space. But to have the sleeve taper towards the opening, we'll start by identifying the side that will become the sleeve opening. These are the 2 sides at the ends of the band. For right-handed crocheters, we crochet counterclockwise, so I place the stitch marker in the corner at the beginning of the sleeve opening side, that is, corner number 4 and corner number 6. The beginning of each round is always the same. A granny stitch in the space of the half double crochet, chain 3 for the very first double crochet. This first group of 3 double crochet will be completed at the end of the row with a second granny stitch in the same space. In each regular space, we make just 1 granny stitch until we reach the next corner space with 2 unoccupied chain stitches. In the next corner space with 2 chain stitches, we make a corner, so 2 granny stitches in the same space separated by chain 2. And thus forming the corner space for the next round. The next space is also a corner space, so we make a corner, granny stitch, chain 2, and another granny stitch in the same space. And we continue until we reach the first stitch marker. In the 4th corner, we remove the stitch marker and make the first corner granny stitch with a group of 3 double crochets. Then chain 2 to turn the corner. But when we crochet on this side, instead of making groups of 3 double crochets, we'll make groups of 2 double crochets. So the second group in the corner space will be a group of 2 double crochets. And I continue with another group of 2 double crochets. We've finished the sleeve opening side. Chain 2 to move to the next side. And repeat the granny stitch group of 3 double crochets for the next side until the next stitch marker. And of course, I'm placing the corner marker again to know where the groups of 2 double crochets begin on each round. There aren't any more corners until the next marker, so we just work a granny stitch in each space. For this side, we do exactly the same thing as for the first sleeve opening. That is with the groups of 2 double crochets. And place the stitch marker again to know where to begin the groups of 2 double crochets on the next round. And when we change sides, we switch back to group of 3 double crochets granny stitch. We make a corner in the corner number 8. And finally, to finish, we complete the round with the second granny stitch in the half double crochet first corner space. And we close the round with a half double crochet at the top of the chain 3 first double crochet of the round, thus reforming the very first corner space. The structure of the following rounds is exactly the same. Add as many rounds as necessary to obtain the desired size. I'll show you again. I make the last granny stitch of the third side, chain 2 to change sides and move to the sleeve opening. Work a group of 2 double crochets in each space, starting with the corner space. And of course, finish in a corner space as well, because as a reminder, the corner space is shared by 2 consecutive sides. Chain 2 to change sides and form the corner space of the next round, then return to the groups of 3 double crochets for the next side. As you can see, the sleeve opening narrows. Continue working as many rounds as needed to achieve the desired size. Remember, the assembly will be done on the last round. In this tutorial, I'll show you another connecting technique, one among many, but you can choose whichever technique you prefer. If you've already watched my previous tutorial, you'll have noticed that only the beginning changes, but the overall structure remains the same, even though in this particular project, the corner that marks the beginning and end of each round is located at the bottom of the front right panel, not the left. As your project progresses, as I mentioned in the previous tutorial, make sure to align the granny stitches at the top of the sleeves to achieve the exact opening between the 2 front panels. You can also check occasionally with a tape measure to ensure the desired wingspan has been reached. Keep in mind that you'll need to add one last round for assembly. My desired wingspan is 130 centimeters, which is equivalent to 13 inches, so I'm going to add another round. The beginning of the round is on the right panel. We'll place the stitch marker in the corner at the end of the sleeve opening, as the beginning of the round is the corner number 1, like in the first tutorial. The same applies to the second sleeve. We crochet the first 4 sides normally, and we assemble them when we crochet the 5th side. Then we continue, and after the second sleeve opening, we make the connection on the 7th side to close the second sleeve and finish the round normally on the 8th side. I'll let you start crocheting the first 4 sides and I'll show you how to assemble. As the change of season is approaching, we'll vary the stitches we use in the upcoming tutorials. I can't wait to share all of this with you. Perhaps the granny stitch will be kept as a reference or point of comparison to keep it easy to understand. On the side of the sleeve opening, we're still working in group of 2 double crochets. When we finished this side, we fold it over to make the sleeve opening and make a slip stitch in the opposite corner space. Then chain 1, and we continue with the first granny stitch on the next side, which is in the same corner space. This time we don't remove the hook. We'll just make a slip stitch in the next space on the opposite side. Then continue with the next granny stitch in the following space. And slip stitch in the next space on the opposite side. And so on. After each granny stitch, we make a slip stitch in the next space on the opposite side. Last slip stitch. And continue crocheting normally until we reach the next stitch marker. Do exactly the same thing to join the second sleeve. For the last connection of the second sleeve, slip stitch, then chain 1, and finish the round normally. I'll let you watch the Momo cardigan tutorial to see how to make the collar if you want to do it. Otherwise, you can absolutely stop here if you want to make a single crochet border or not. For my part, I'm going to add a few rounds to make a small collar. And for the finishing touch, I'm going to add laces. Chain 1 and single crochet 2 in the same space of the half double crochet. Chain 1 and single crochet 2 in the next space. And so on. I'll continue like this all the way around the bottom edge to the next corner. In the corner, I make 2 single crochets, then chain 2 and 2 single crochets in the same space. Then continue the same pattern, chain 1, then 2 single crochets in the next space. But when I crochet on this side, from time to time, I replace the chain 1 with a lace. So you need to plan ahead. Spot the granny stitches you want a lace aligned to, at regular intervals if you want several. For my part, I'm going to add one right here. Simply make a foundation chain of the length you want for the lace. Try to make a round number of chain stitches so your laces are all the same length. Turn and slip stitch across the entire foundation chain, starting from the 4th stitch from the hook. Once you've made a slip stitch in each stitch across the entire chain, continue directly with 2 single crochets in the next space. The lacing having replaced the chain 1 between 2 groups of 2 single crochets. And we continue. I'll let you place your laces wherever you like. I'm going to make another one at the top of the collar. I do exactly the same thing as for the first lace. When that one is finished, I make 2 single crochets in the same corner space and continue crocheting the edge. Don't forget to crochet symmetrically the laces on the right panel. And to finish, we make 2 single crochets in the very first space. Chain 2 and slip stitch in the very first single crochet to close the border around. Another slip stitch to secure. You can cut the yarn, leave a good length to hide it more easily. Then pull the yarn, fasten off, and weave in the ends. And there you have it. Thank you again for following this tutorial to the end. Like the video if you enjoyed it. If you learned something new, feel free to share it widely. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or just want to chat. Don't hesitate to follow me on all my platforms for lots of crochet projects. Feel free to tag me if you want to share your creations. As soon as I finish the written pattern, it will be available on Ko-fi and Ravelry. Thanks again and see you very soon for another video. Happy crocheting!